Hello, everybody, and welcome to Scare Your Friends. I am joined by my friends Dylan, Dan, and William, and we are hopping in the showers together as friends once again.
I was about to say.
So, how are you guys? I know that Dylan is not feeling incredibly well. He was really sick yesterday, and he won't be reading today. But how are you feeling otherwise, Dylan? You happy to be here?
I'm happy to be here in the showers. No homo.
Pass the soap.
If you take a hot enough shower, it helps with the.
I did.
Okay.
What's your favorite shampoo to use in the shower?
Head and Shoulders.
Oh, me too. Dude, we should share Head and Shoulders sometime.
No, I'm not pitching.
All right,
I'm
sorry.
not pitching a tent with you. Okay?
All right, that's all right. Okay, whatever, man. Dan, how are you doing? Don't look at me like that. Don't look at me like that.
Sorry, it's the beer, John.
Dan doesn't approve.
You're getting drunk off one fucking Corona?
Yeah, I'm turning into Nate, apparently.
Jesus, who's also not here.
Carrying
because...
his spirit with you.
Yeah, no kidding. I'm good, John. Thank you. Having a good time. Good 3-day weekend. It's fun. It's great.
It is Memorial Day weekend. And we also have William here. How are you doing, William?
Yeah, I'm pretty good. I'm in a pretty mellow mood, so.
It's a great
After
mood
he's
to be
shitting all over.
After he was screaming about D&D characters for a while.
Alright, there were some ridiculous
Stay
decisions
tuned
to
for our
make,
Dungeons and Dragons podcast.
Don't even...
Which doesn't exist.
Which doesn't exist and will never
I
exist.
know that some people will probably want it.
No.
So...
Listen,
Hey.
never say never, alright?
Honestly,
Never.
I'm gonna... I mean, I might experience it first. And then maybe make the decision if I want to do
Let's cross
that.
this bridge.
I mean, I'm a little scared about just doing it to begin with. I'm like, once you do D&D, I feel like there's no point of return for you.
No,
it's like, that's it.
No,
It's
I'm
over.
in that hole for the rest
So,
of my life.
we'll cross that bridge when we burn it. That's
Right. Fucking
We'll
nuke it.
We'll get there.
All right. So last time we read part 1 of a story called The Showers. Now, from what I remember from I think the general consensus was that we really didn't like it.
Oh,
I believe...
Well, that was the general consensus, eh?
Now I think
Oh.
the story within the story part was the positive. I think the story that Mr. Mays told we thought was pretty good. There were moments where we were trying to get into it, but then the narrator kept pulling us away.
The drug-induced basement crawl, yeah, it was
right. I mean, it was fine. But the problem was the narrator kept distracting
No, I don't want to
us.
interrupt, but Mr. Mays' story is really cool.
It's
It was totally better than anything and I'd come up with, and it sent shivers up and down my spinal cord.
I was shitting my pants and coming at the same time! it was too much. It was excessive.
Why would that be too great thing? Okay.
It was great. It's a pair.
I don't know. I was gonna say I feel like combining. I mean, I love pooping. It's one of my favorite things.
Mr.
to do.
Mays combines horror and ecstasy with a deft hand.
Yeah.
So it's.
I love pooping. I love coming. Combining those two, I feel like I would lose.
I mean, it's a win-win. There's nowhere to go but down
It's
from there.
Like you've achieved God levels of.
I mean, people talk about finding nirvana. It's right there, guys. It's
You know
there
what?
for the taking.
You know what? Honestly,
With a firm grip and a full stomach, anything,
Who doesn't love a frosted toast?
Honestly, I preferred what we were talking about Dirty Assholes.
Yeah, both of these have opened with really disgusting conversations.
So I think either I don't know if I think I guessed this, or we all kind of guessed what would happen in part 2. So breaking the fourth wall here. I still have not read part 2 of the story. I've staved myself from reading it.
This is Melinda all over again.
No, but what ended up happening was Beth ended up sending me the thumbnail for the second part, and I was just looking at it like, wow, this looks pretty good. I don't know what it means, so so I'll be able to properly be like, oh, that's what that meant. Now I understand.
Jesus Christ.
Well, this will be very exciting for you then. At least you have something.
I'm sure we'll all love it, John, as much as we loved part 1. Let's do it.
We're gonna approach it with an open mind, right, Dan?
I mean, as open as fucking reading.
That's a yes. Alrighty.
Alright, let's just get into it. So this is part... Oh, my cat is going crazy.
Whoa!
Lester, calm down. Don't come... Oh, he's coming.
He's having
Said,
a
come,
He's like,
calm
what's up,
down.
bitch?
He's coming for us now. Keep him at bay, Will. Alright, we're going to start
kick it
reading.
off.
Alright.
Gil, you're not reading. Take care of the cat.
I mean, you can if you want.
He was joking, Dylan. Stay seated.
Alright, this is part 2 of The Showers. I'm awake now, semi-sober, and ready to finish this for you guys, the internet, and whoever cares to hear it. I didn't find out Mr. Mays had passed away until a couple of months after the funeral service. Initially, I was going to seek out his family in order to send my condolences, but it wasn't as if Mr. Mays and I were best friends or anything like that, so I refrained. I continued through my college career and graduated a year or so after our bar meeting. Graduating with English as my major wasn't a mistake, but it wasn't exactly something that landed me any sort of
This is
immediate
getting
jobs
too
after
real for
college.
me.
As Dan starts
Getting way
quivering.
too real. I immediately have a deep emotional connection with this narrator now.
That's all it took for Dan.
Oh god.
An English major, and the two are sold.
Dan, did you write this?
Listen. No. 1, 2. Okay, listen. I'm using it right now, so there you go.
You're not an emotionless pig. Yay.
Oh no, we're not
They don't
dragging
even
that up.
understand that reference. You have
Fucking
to...
piece
not
of
yet.
shit.
Not yet, but...
They never
Not-
will.
Not yet. It happened a month ago.
Not
I mean,
even.
not yet.
A week ago.
We're not getting into this. John, continue reading.
Now I have saved a pretty solid amount of money while I was in school and decided that I deserved a bit of a vacation,
Oh, fuck
if
this
you
guy.
will. I took my spare cash, got together with my college buddy Steve, packed up and hit the road, aiming for somewhere in the Rocky Mountains. I had lived near Littleton, Colorado when I was young, and I remembered loving the area, so this destination was as good as any. By the way, if you remember from the last part, this is the guy who moves around a lot. We were talking about how suspicious it was and how that could have been the real story about why mom and dad keep having to move every
Yeah.
so.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah,
Another funny mouth victim.
exactly.
Or wide mouth, excuse me.
Well, that was the wide mouth one. That was his last move, unless he came back.
This is all the same narrator.
Right. The trip was a success. We made it somewhere around Estes Park, Colorado, and found a cheap cabin that we rented for about a month. The days were filled with lounging, hiking, and generally things that involved little to no work on our parts. After our rental was through, we packed up again and headed our way
This
back east.
motherfucker.
Sure.
This motherfucker went to school for English, and then rented a cabin without a job for a month.
He had some spare
He's
money.
like, I needed a vacation.
That old
for
money.
a month?
That old money, Dan.
3 days after I
Okay.
graduated college,
Damn.
I was back at the Dollar Tree.
Damn.
You remember, Dill? You were there.
I was there, yeah.
I went to school with these people who were like, yeah, you know what? I'll take like a year off. I'm gonna go see Europe. And
I
I'm
wish
sitting
I
there-
had that
I'm sitting there
luxury.
like, you people! Like I don't get it.
No one wants to work anymore, alright?
Ridiculous. Well, it's the.
It's not even that.
It's
We're
not even
talking
that.
about the
It's
absurdity.
that they're just like born into wealth, and you can just do whatever you
Yeah,
want.
old man.
This is
Dylan.
unfair because now what's happened
Fuck
is
this
that
guy.
whenever I'm looking at
I
looking
hope
at
this
Dylan,
guy does.
my cat is cradled in Dylan's arms. Now I can't even yell at Dylan anymore because the cat's there.
He's
So
like, I
it's
don't want the cat to think I'm yelling at him.
Yeah, exactly. All right. Sometime during this trip, we had met up with a couple Estes Park. Is that what is that word?
Estes.
Estes?
It doesn't really matter in
I
the
know.
end.
It's fucking hick-ass Colorado.
The bassist from
Wow.
Pain.
We met up with a couple Estes Park natives in one of the local bars. We never typically hung out with them or anything like that. We just had conversations now and then over drinks and food. One night, these guys were paying their tab and packing up to leave awfully early. They were usually there until the wee hours of the morning. When we questioned them about it, they told us that they were headed to a little get-together with some friends of theirs, and they invited us. Having nothing else to do, we hopped in the car and followed them to the party.
The party itself was very low-key and ultimately inconsequential to the story.
Great, so let's keep talking about it, because I'm thinking the same thing as we're reading it, and then already,
Dan,
John. Already,
Dan,
John.
Dan,
Look, you have an
open mind.
emotional
The
connection
first two paragraphs
You
of this
English
part are
majors.
inconsequential to what happens, but I'm going to keep going.
Dan,
He's a bullshitter, like all English majors.
open
I'm kidding.
mind.
Whoa.
You know what? He's right, but at least I know how to write a fucking story.
However, the important thing about it, Dan, was that at some point in the night, we were all sitting around the fire and swapping ghost
Okay,
stories.
so let me revise this. I went to college, took a month off with my friend, hung out in a cabin, we met some cool people, went to a party one night, and I decided to tell my ghost stories. I summed up in 3 sentences. Or, like,
All
2
right,
max.
Hemingway. Give it a
I
rest.
was like, what
All right,
else?
we get it. At this point in my life, I wasn't as much of a ham as I was in my younger
Keeps
years.
using that
I
term.
hate it.
Yeah, me too.
But with a little bit of
We're
encouragement,
already.
I started on a couple of stories that I remembered telling in my youth. Eventually, I made it to Mr. May's story about the showers.
God, what a great story. I just wanted to put that in there. Just like, oh my god, this was my best story.
I told made it about Mr. May's story, the excellent story, The Showers.
The divine story by Mr. Mays.
Every time that I had told it after hearing it from Mr. Mays, I had spiced it up a little bit.
Yeah, I would.
So it's
yeah,
so it's not direct plagiarism. He's just
Well, no, I mean that's how you tell a story.
No,
like,
I know, I'm being a
that's
dick.
exactly how you do
Just
it.
being a penis.
I'm just being a William right now.
But, okay, I see how it is. But out of some sort of subconscious respect for my former teacher, I went straight into the version he told my class in my sophomore year of high school.
You know, the version that I don't remember very well, but also remembered in explicit detail when I retold it at the beginning of the story. It's
You know
great.
what, Dan? If we're gonna be picking nits,
You are the king of picking nits. Don't start with me, William.
The group enjoyed my stories for the most part, the showers being the mutual favorite among the partygoers. Steve and I left for the cabin at around 5 in the morning, and he asked me about that story on the drive home. I told him all about Mr. Mays, that class, my love for everything horror-related and whatnot, and he suggested that we try to find the place on our return trip to New York. Don't throw your hand up,
All right.
because we all knew it was going this way.
By the way, I'm remembering more things I thought about on part 1, and one of the things I would have done to possibly improve the story was have it so that this guy isn't a big fan of horror, but then he hears the story about Mr. Mays, and that's his first real exposure to it, and he's like, wow, that's really cool, and then he gets into it.
Right, because you could have literally cut out the whole...
Right, that's the first thing.
paragraph.
But the second thing, it makes the connection to Mr. Mays more stronger now.
Right.
And that's what,
You're
that's what
absolutely
makes the scene...
Pops his little old ghost cherry is what it does.
Wait, you know
Exactly.
what? Honestly, it was good.
Takes his spook
Insightful
hymen
and a
and
way
just kinda
smarter choice for the
flops
story,
it
absolutely.
apart.
And it makes us realize how much the narrator cares about Mr. Mays. He's not just some other teacher.
Initially, I was reluctant simply because I didn't feel like aimlessly wandering through Nebraska for days, looking for some old farm building that was probably demolished at this point. But a couple of days before we left Colorado, I told Steve that it sounded like fun. We weren't going to be able to do another trip like this for a long time, so I figured that we might as well make the best of it. Somewhere in the back of my mind, I thought of it as a little tribute to Mr. Mays, a guy that, in retrospect, helped me realize I wanted to be a writer.
All right, so that's nice.
That's fine. No, that
That's
makes
nice.
I think that makes a lot of sense.
That's
Actually,
nice.
if you live on the East Coast, you're never gonna come back here again, probably. So
Fucking Bill
Beautiful,
Denborough.
beautiful tribute.
you're never gonna rent out another goddamn cabin for the Rocky Mountains. So fuck it.
Well, he's a writer, so odds are probably just bring a bag of drugs and live in a cabin.
Anyway,
for a shotgun.
we left Colorado.
Whoa! All right.
This is a confession time, Dan.
No, fucking Dylan was like with a shotgun, like under his breath, like what the fuck,
Like very
dude?
quiet.
Ernest Hemingway.
Kurt Cobain, $1,000, please.
Anyway,
Kirk for 1,000 is what I meant to say.
Sorry. We left Colorado and made the long, boring, and barren drive to Broken Bow, Nebraska. Or hell on earth, as Mr. Mays had put it. We found a motel in town and hung around for a couple of days, venturing out 100 miles or so in any given direction each day after that. I had remembered Mr. Mays telling us it was somewhere outside of Broken Bow, but I don't think he got any more specific than that.
We tried asking the townsfolk if they had any information about the showers, but we were usually met with blank stares or eye-rolling when we told them what exactly this place was. The only person who seemed to know anything about it was an older lady that worked at a gas station on the outskirts of town. I don't recall her name, but this woman was just one of those cheerful old people, very helpful and generally interested in what anyone had to say to her. Steve had started talking to her at checkout, and she asked about our license plate, commenting about the fact that we were very far from home. We had nowhere in particular to be, so Steve and I ended up talking to this woman for about 15 minutes, at which point we brought up our hunt for the place known as the Showers. Initially, the name didn't ring any bells with the woman, which made sense, seeing how Mr. Mays had just given it the name after his experience there. But when I began to describe the details that I remembered from his story, the friendly old woman interrupted me. Her tone was not scornful or mean in any way, but she became very terse and deliberate with her words from that point on.
People don't deal with anything relating to that sort of business around here anymore, she told us. That was all a long time ago. Following her statements, she attempted to be cheerful again, excusing herself to the restroom and wishing us the best on our return trip to New York.
What the fuck does that mean? What does that mean?
I don't
People
understand.
deal with anything related to that sort of business. What business was she talking about?
You're talking about my children.
I feel like there's a lot of these stories where it just becomes like you find the old wizened woman
Yeah, the trope.
The wise old woman who gives you your clue to go forward. I feel
You know
like
what?
happened in
I think
several stories
in
in a
part
row
one
now.
we mentioned comparing the story to Room 733. And I know this has nothing to do with that story, but each story had an old lady in it.
Yep,
that
they
was
played
like,
the exact same card to build it forward.
Yeah,
As-
so no one
as
else
this
knows
woman-
about this, dearie, but no one really deals with that
Fucking
business
Granny
anymore.
Royce.
And her face
Okay,
changed.
excuse me. Now I have to go take a shit. Be right back.
And as she leaves the room, and she secretly takes the telephone, and goes,
Yeah,
I got
coming.
two for
Yep,
you.
yep,
Yeah,
yep.
Good for you.
suddenly it's
Fucking
They
cabin
Live
in the woods shit.
or Cabin in the Woods.
Steve and I returned to the car without a word. Both of us were thinking about what the lady had said. Again, she didn't seem to be angry at all. She just didn't want to hear another word about it. We were driving back to the hotel before Steve said something. I mean, if I had to live in a place associated with an urban legend or something like that, I would totally mess with anyone who asked about it. Yeah, I'm sure that's what the woman was doing.
That's what the 80-year-old woman would say.
I'm right. That's what the 80-year-old woman said, who became terse and had very deliberate words.
She was a walking trope, Steve. You don't understand.
I mean, eventually... I mean, I don't know why the fuck that got me so bad. I mean, eventually you just got tired of people asking about it, and so you just try to scare them to get them to shut up, wouldn't you?
No, Steve, you wouldn't.
No, Steve, that's not what human beings do.
If you scare certain human beings, they'll just be more interested. That's how it works.
I agreed with Steve and kept driving, but the whole experience wasn't sitting right with me. If this was some sort of well-known legend in the area, why did no one else in the town seem to know anything about it? They're making a lot of assumptions. But I managed to shrug it off. Mind you, neither of us were scared of finding the showers. This little excursion on our road trip was more like a scavenger hunt, a cap-off to an overall relaxing vacation. Steve and I were basically like tourists, hunting for the site at which a famous movie was filmed or something like that. We went to the whole situation with little to no expectations and a fleeting hope that we would be able to find this place.
And by rights, they shouldn't be able to find it.
No, statistically,
Statistically, it would take a while, but
It's
they're probably
maybe-
gonna. Of course, but story logic, you're gonna stumble upon it. So far, I really don't have too many issues with this part. Actually, though, I mean, the
Mostly just
the
baggage.
motivations are there. They make sense. He is being a little full of himself in the beginning, but honestly, I don't know. I mean, this isn't awful at all. What do you think, Dylan?
You know what? It's just filling out the regular things that we were going over in the first part. It's not really grabbing.
Right.
Dylan-
Dylan's
It's
not
just-
amused.
Dylan is not
It's
amused.
not amused.
I'm here and I'm not amused.
We spent another day in Broken Bow before we took our next trip out to try and find the showers. Nebraska isn't as terrible of a place as people make it out to be, but it really isn't all that exciting. We found a bar and spent some time there, and that was just about the extent of our activity on our day off. When we did get back on the road, we decided that we would attempt to stay off the main roads for as much of the day as we could. I knew that there was no way that this place was going to be off the highway, and I remembered some detail about a dirt road in Mr. May's story, so we went looking for those. This was a fairly futile effort. Most of Nebraska is dirt roads. It was 7 in the evening when we came upon a small but thick forest. I use the term lightly, but for Nebraska, this place was like an oasis. The trees were full and thick, shrouding most of its insides in the darkness. The sun was setting, and even though we had run into a few of these random crops of trees, we agreed that this one showed more promise than any of the others. There wasn't really a road, but there looked to be a path where the dirt road might have been at some point, so we drove along that. If the car was able to handle the Rocky Mountains, a dirt path in Nebraska was going to give us no trouble.
We moved slowly and carefully along this trail, making sure to clear any fallen trees in the road, or rocks that would render the car useless when the sun was finished setting. How are they clearing fallen trees in the road, Dan?
They're just kicking them, just...
They just giving them a little boot?
Yeah, they're just, they're getting out of the
I mean, they
car
can,
for 5
yeah, they
feet.
can, yeah. They're young.
They're young, virile males, straight
I
out of
believe
college,
Yeah, nothing.
Okay. It was pretty dark in this place during the day, but when night came, it was something else entirely. I had an inkling at this point that we had found the right place, but I didn't want to jinx it, so we continued onward. I didn't realize it at the time, but the little bits of light that managed to penetrate the canopy in this miniature forest actually did make it look as if the tree branches were trying to grab the car, just like Mr. Mays had mentioned in his story. I'm still convinced he made up the part about the animal eyes, though. The most aggressive creature we saw in the woods was a dead rabbit on the side of the trail. It didn't have any obvious signs of death. It just looked like it had simply laid down and never bothered to get up.
We drove around in the darkness for quite a while before we found a clearing. We had to move several smaller clusters of branches out of the way before, but right in front of our exit was a giant, dead monster of a tree. There was no way we were moving this one, so we got out and turned on the bright headlights in the hopes that it would illuminate the area in front of us. There was a feeling of excitement mixed strangely with fear when I saw what lay 50 feet beyond the clearing. There, lit partially by the headlights from the car and a little bit of light from the crescent moon, was what appeared to be an old barn house. This wasn't a typical farmhouse. It was larger than the barns that I had seen in films and didn't have any sort of crest. It basically looked like a small warehouse. I wasn't entirely sure at this point if this was the place we were looking for, but this was definitely the closest we had come. I don't mind the idea of, like, they hit a tree trunk that they can't drive past. I think that's it. To, like, get them out of the car, I think that's fine to me.
No, I mean, at this point, nothing has happened that is out of, like, comprehension or believability.
I mean, we were commenting on it being tropey before, but I think that's fine. The whole tree thing is fine.
I even like how it builds up to like where they're already moving tree branches and moving small trees ahead of time, and now they come across something that they can't move.
Right. I had moved through the brush until it was roughly 20 feet from the entrance, at which point all of the growth seemed to stop. I don't know if the owners had done something with the soil, but the whole structure had a border around it that was clear of any sort of plant life. I approached the entrance to the building. A large sliding door. Steve came up behind me with 2 flashlights in hand. So were we just going to run off into that place in the dark? He laughed. I gave a half-hearted chuckle and grabbed one of the lights from his hand. Mine was a little but pretty bright flashlight. It was the kind that hikers would most likely fasten in their backpacks, just in case they were stranded at night. It worked well enough. I grabbed the metal door with both hands, holding the flashlight with my mouth, and gave it a tug. It moved slightly, creaked a little bit, but there was no way I was doing this myself. Steve came up behind me, set his flashlight on the ground, grabbed the door, and said 1, 2, 3.
He pulled at the door with all we could muster. Once we had managed to move it a couple of inches, it must have latched back onto its track because it slid very easily. Stopping hard with a loud and echoing thud when it was completely open, Steve picked up his flashlight and walked behind me. I had already moved inside. The inside of the structure was exceptionally bare, almost troublingly so.
Dear.
Troublingly.
That's a mouthful of word. I wasn't entirely sure how far we were from the nearest home or small town, but there wasn't even the slightest bit of evidence that anyone had been in this building for years. There were no broken beer bottles or empty bags of chips. There weren't even any animal droppings or eager plants that managed to grow here. The room was expansive, larger than your average farm, but not the warehouse-size monstrosity that I believe Mr. Mays had described in his story. I was sure that it was simply a holding area for farming equipment or something similar at that point. Disappointed, I wandered to the entrance while Steve ventured into the expansive darkness. As I was running over the details of the story in my mind, something struck me like a sack of bricks. In Mr. May's story, there was a silo near the barn. I ran outside, my eyes adjusting easily because at the very least it was brighter outside. I looked in all directions, running around the perimeter of the building. Surely, if there was ever a silo near this place, there would be some kind of evidence of it somewhere. But despite my hopes, there was nothing but a cluster of thick bushes on one side, brush and dirt everywhere, and the forest that we had come from.
The twist is going to be that the silo Mr. Mays thought he saw was the alien ship that had landed next to the barn.
I would love if they actually, like, if it pulled a Barbie.avi and they just never found it. Like, I would love that.
I'd be
but I
super
know
on
from
board.
the preface,
I'd be thrilled.
From the end of part 1 that he's like, we
imagine?
never forget. Like,
well, the thing is, in Mr. May's story, he describes seeing these little girls. So it's not exactly like a Barbie.avi where we just don't know.
No. He's saying...
like, they just don't find it.
He's just saying
like,
they leave.
Just don't find it.
I would actually...
I
wouldn't mind that either, honestly.
That.
For this story, I wouldn't mind that.
They build it up so much, and they're like, we couldn't find it, and they go home. That'd be fantastic.
We go home and blow each other.
I mean, that's not
redeeming quality.
No, that'd be great.
Not the blowing part.
I couldn't find the building, but I found you.
No, what's going to happen
Found you,
is
Steve.
he's going to poke his head out outside to leave later, and the silo's going to be there, and little girls are going to be walking out of it, and he's going to duck back in the barn to hide. Then they find the underground.
Okay.
And they get trapped by the little alien ring babies.
Ring babies.
I walked back into the building, frustrated and tired. Steve was still excited, eagerly running around the inside of the building. Even if I could just find a shower head or a pipe, he said, then we'd know it was true. Just keep looking with me. I didn't want to ruin his excitement. I'd told Steve the story several times, but obviously he didn't realize that this wasn't the place. The building was weird, yes. It was out of place and oddly pristine, but it wasn't the location of the showers. I let him explore for a little bit before I called him over. This was probably as close as we're going to get, man, I said, but this isn't it. Remember the silo? His face went from excitement to disappointment in an instant, much like a young child who didn't get the present he wanted on his birthday. I patted him on the shoulder. This is still pretty cool, though. I mean, we could still tell people we found it. I was reverting back to my old habits quickly. In this, Steve feels like a golden retriever in this moment. He honest to God.
Especially
Sorry,
with the
boy, no bone here, pats him on the head. But what a great barn, huh?
Read the next sentence, it makes it much better.
Steve laughed. Yeah, man, I guess we could. It is definitely creepy, though. We should get some pictures as proof, you know? I agreed with him. I'm gonna go grab the camera real quick, he said as he bolted out of the entrance to the building, tongue wagging side to side. I was left alone in the building.
Oh, here we go.
Rocky!
It was very quiet when I was alone there. Scoob! I could hear the faint sound of Steve running through the brush into the car, panting wildly. But once he was far enough away, everything was quiet. I remember not even hearing the wind or the chirping of crickets as I walked deeper into the dark, flashlight in hand. I was convinced that there had to be something. As I approached the far corner of the room, the sound of my feet scratching against the dirt was interrupted by a soft, hollow thud. I stopped, trying to figure out what it was. I put my foot down hard against the ground and heard it again. I stomped one more time. The floor I was standing on was covering something hollow.
I walked to the wall of the room, looking carefully at the floor to try to spot any holes or gaps. As far as I had known, it was solid ground that this thing sat atop, so I was convinced that I had found a hatch or a basement or something. I heard Steve coming back through the brush as I shouted, "Steve! Come over here! It's As I went to say the word hollow, I hopped a little bit, hoping to create the sound so you'd be able to hear it upon entering the door. The second that my feet made contact with the floor, I felt it give out beneath me. The memory of the fall is fuzzy, but I do recall hearing wood splinter. I remember seeing the light from Steve's flashlight falling away into complete darkness. It wasn't a long fall, but it must have fallen in a terrible position because I know that I lost consciousness for several seconds at least."
This is why we need a ban on big sodas, Dan.
Is that what it, yeah?
Yep, that's right. This is why the government needs to step in and say no more big gulps. Because this is what happens. Barns are being destroyed willy-nilly across Nebraska. It just...
How the fuck does your mind work?
About?
Are you fucking kidding
Are you
me?
turning into Dylan
Think
right
if
now?
he was 20 pounds lighter, he
You
wouldn't
would
be in
be
this
giving
category.
Dylan-
That's the joke? That he's obese?
It's not a joke!
That's the joke!
It's a tragic state
If
of American
Dylan made
life!
that joke, you would be on his ass.
It's not a joke!
All over him.
You would be shitting all
You
over
would
him.
be.
Dylan says Dylan would make it as a joke. I'm saying it's
You are-
important.
How? You don't
the
sound like
fuck?
it is.
Okay, I don't know if you guys live in New York State, but was it Cuomo who did the big soda tax?
Oh my god.
Where he was banning sodas over a certain
Oh my
size?
God. Oh my god.
Sort of cast
And,
a
and then he
shit.
canceled it out.
Please.
But this is indicative
stop.
of the problem
Beantown rat.
that we're
Please stop.
seeing in our
Okay.
culture, and it's cropping up in
Remember
our
how that?
creepypastas.
Hey, remember how the narrator killed all the tension in the story?
Yeah, no
That's
shit.
William. It's fucking
To be
William.
fair-
He's
I
the
mean-
narrator.
I mean,
It's just
to be fair,
sabotaged the
Will
story.
is adding a bit of a backstory because we don't know his backstory. So
Are you, Dylan? Do not agree with him right now.
Come on, Dylan.
That's
It's
what
I
a
was-
very
I
don't
Dylan
want to-
thing for
I don't
William to
want
say.
to.
That's why.
I don't want
John, I'm
to.
on your side. Get away from me.
Dylan,
No.
is this couch a pod? Because we are two peas in it.
What the hell is happening? They can't
John.
see.
Sean.
I know, Dan, I can't even describe what I just witnessed. Can you?
When I woke up, I was staring at a bright light. For an instant, I thought about approaching the fabled light at the end of the tunnel. I was angry at myself. You died in Nebraska, Jack. Oh, his name is Jack. Why do you know how... Oh, we knew that from the first one. Why do you know...
Did we?
Yeah, he said it.
Maybe.
Wow, you do know how to fuck up. My self-deprecation in the afterlife was interrupted by what sounded like Steve's voice. Bark, 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 bark.
Rocky! 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 Why do you hear me?
Jack, 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 can you hear me? Dude, wake up. Please wake up. He's
Rocky, where's my cup?
Whoa.
Raffney!
Who's going, Steve?
Oh my god, go ahead, John.
God damn it, my voice hurts now. I managed to lift my head up off the floor just enough for him to celebrate. The pain in my head was immense, but it was outweighed. I was laughing at the words William was saying. I saw the word outweighed. But it was outweighed by the pain shooting through my knee. I knew I had a concussion, but the pain in my knee was just so much more pressing. I looked around until I found the tiny flashlight. I sat up and reassured Steve. I'm okay. I just hurt my knee. I bumped my head too really hard.
How did he bump his head?
He fell.
He fell feet first.
Yeah,
We
but
don't,
does he, like,
he has
doing-
no idea how
He
funny
would- he
fell.
would-
But William, if you're
unconscious.
falling into darkness,
This is where you're gonna have your problem?
How do you twirl around to land on your head?
No, you're not bracing yourself for impact because you don't know where the impact is. So when he probably hit the ground, he fell face first and landed on
He
his
doesn't
fucking
remember
head.
because he
backwards.
probably
Right.
fell face first and
Or
hit the
backwards.
ground.
You're probably
Or
right.
maybe
His
he hit,
knees-
or
his
maybe
ground, his knees
William.
gave out.
How about this? He landed on his knee first and he
fell
fell
forward.
hard on his
Right.
head.
Or fell
It
sideways.
doesn't take
bitch.
much to knock you out.
No, see, but this is the problem with soda.
I'm a
because it makes your
scientist.
head heavier.
Well, you see, he was actually fat, so his stomach would brace the
Look,
impact.
No. Maybe he was pre-diabetic. Maybe he wasn't. That's not the point here. The point is just the way he fell confuses
fuck
me.
is happening?
But
Okay,
then again,
William,
I
imagine-
realize. Okay.
Yeah, it hits his. You land on your feet, and then he crumples to the ground, hits his head really hard.
I realize this is a strange hill to die on, so I'm willing to move
I
on.
always love when we have to argue really, really trivial semantics in these fucking stories. I
It's
really
amazing.
do. I really do. It's my favorite thing to do.
I can
love it.
believe in a story where a man falls through the floor that he gets a concussion and gets knocked out for a little bit. I think that's pretty reasonable to expect. It's a pretty solid injury.
Fuck.
Right, fuck, man. Okay. Thank fuck, man. I thought you were dead. Imagine that, though. Dying in fucking Nebraska. It'd be awful, Shaggy. His words made me laugh a little bit, but I stopped myself.
Killed by the
The slightest
creeper's legs.
The slightest shaking hurt my head and made me incredibly dizzy. I guess a rope, said Steve. What? I asked quietly. Should I go get a rope to get you out of there, or do you see a ladder? I looked around the walls that sat in front of me. They were smooth
Holy
cement.
fuck, he's actually really lucky he didn't fucking knock himself
Yeah, I could
out.
have. Well, he did. I
Wha-
mean,
yeah, but like
much worse.
for
Well,
a
They said-
while.
They said though it wasn't that big of a fall though.
It doesn't matter. You're hitting cement,
Dude,
Dylan.
we gotta
Head
move through
first.
this.
I
I
know,
realize
I
because
know.
everyone
Dylan,
got really
don't jump
mad.
inside.
So
Like
It
you
wasn't
said,
that far of a fall,
let's
but you
climb
land
over
on
the
your
hill and
knee
go.
and fall on your head on solid
How about
ground.
His head hits the side of
Okay,
the wall that's made of
I
cement.
mentioned one little comment. You guys have just hang on it.
Because
Let it go.
Just fucking
Let
blow
it
your,
go.
Just blow your nose against sick boy. We're moving on.
Ugh.
There was
Good
no way I was. It was awful. It was an awful comeback.
suddenly I'm in first grade again. Thank you, Dylan.
Oh no, you're not.
Oh,
Can we read
He
now?
said that,
Can we
not me.
fucking read this story? It's actually decent.
Stop!
I
Let's
know you
stop.
are, but what am I?
I'm done. I'm done.
Dan's going home.
Fucking, I'm done.
There's no way I was climbing out of here. Yeah, get the rope, I said. It's buried under all our stuff. It might be in my red climbing bag, but I'm not sure. Steve nodded, telling me to hang in there and that he would be back in a little bit, and then he ran off. The silence that followed was uncomfortable. After the sound of Steve's feet scraping the floor above me faded away, I was only able to hear that buzzing that occurs in total silence, intertwined with the pulsing in my head. I pushed myself over to the nearest cement wall, braced myself against it, resting and breathing deep in an attempt to calm myself. The cement was unnaturally cold against my back. It was summer, so I only had a t-shirt on, but it felt like ice even though that.
Through that.
Man, I am sucking at reading today. Again, this observation was primarily made after the fact. In the moment, it just felt good to lean against something.
I sat there waiting for Steve in this underground basement, and I began to feel uneasy. I felt like an idiot for falling down here. I felt pain from my injuries as well. That all seemed to fade into one emotion in an instant when I heard what I could only identify as breathing, somewhere to my left. I convinced myself it was my injured mind playing tricks on me for a few moments, until my mind decided to rapidly replay Mr. May's story. When I had first heard it in that classroom years before, I was more impressed than I was scared. But now, sitting in a dark basement in the middle of Nebraska, I felt something that I hadn't felt in a long time. It couldn't even be summed up in the word fear. As I sat there, I felt all-encompassing dread. I pointed my flashlight to my left, the direction from which I thought I heard the sound. The light didn't reach the other wall, It was too far away. But I was comforted to see absolutely nothing there. I breathed deeply for a couple more seconds before I heard another noise in the darkness. It was very quick, and I cannot be sure that it wasn't my own body moving around without my noticing, but I thought that I heard a scraping sound not 10 feet in front of me. It sounded like a noise your feet make when you are walking across a dirt-covered floor. Before I could react, I heard the breathing to my left again, closer this time. There was no way this was real. I hadn't seen so much as a spiderweb in this building. Now I was convincing myself something next to me was breathing. I was angry at myself for getting so worked up. I told myself that the human brain is constantly hallucinating. I told myself that while in silence or darkness, the brain makes sounds to fill the gap, or make you think you see things that aren't there. I channeled my inner skeptic in order to calm myself. It worked. It worked until I saw a flash of something in front of me. I can't be entirely sure what it was, but I heard the accompanying sounds of feet scraping against the floor, and I began to swell with dread. I decided that the best course of action at this point was to turn off my flashlight, assuming that if they couldn't see me, they couldn't get to me, whatever they might be. If I close my eyes, they can't see me, Dan.
I mean, yes and no, because I feel like what else are you supposed to do at this point? Like,
Yeah,
at
there's
least
only
they
two
wouldn't-
options.
Right, at least they wouldn't see where the lights come, you know what I mean? Whatever.
At this point, they've already seen where the lights come in.
Yeah, but at least he can, like, maybe move a little bit, you know? As long as he
Give it a
doesn't
little
run into
shimmy,
something.
shimmy down the
Right,
wall.
shimmy, shimmy down the wall.
And when the first shiv goes, it hits concrete, you know?
I turned off my flashlight and was left in complete and total darkness. The bulb of the flashlight faded as it cooled, and I put it into my pocket, simultaneously pushing back against the cold cement wall in an attempt to stand. I managed to... Oh, he's not even fucking standing at this point.
His knee's fucked.
I know, but, like... I managed to get up on my feet, foot, and found that I couldn't stand to put any pressure on my injured knee. I limped to a corner, humming to myself to... This...
Yes?
No, like, honestly, this feels like this half of the story was written by somebody completely different.
Yeah, this is fun.
Because, like, everything makes sense at this point. Like,
And he learned the error of his ways.
I
It's
mean,
'cause, you
again,
know,
I think in part one, even we were saying that not everything was shit. But it was just the way the
but
narrator was
this
interrupting
just
his own
feels
story.
like this is
No,
written
that's
much more concisely.
The problem was in the first part that he wanted to write it as a flashback, and he kept intertwining his, like, reactions to it.
Yeah.
Whereas this is meant to be... It's not written in the modern tense, but for some reason he's not interjecting at all as a narrator.
Right.
He's just
And
describing
the-
his own
the stuff
experience. He's
is
like
just-
he's literally telling a
the
ghost.
stuff that's going on is making sense, like, and, like, just putting this character in further danger, like, naturally.
Well, it's doing wonders for the pacing as well, yeah.
Right. So, alright, whatever. I managed to get up on my feet foot, and I found that I couldn't stand to put pressure on my injured knee. I limped to the corner, humming to myself, trying to break the deafening silence. Okay, so I turned on my flashlight, but then I started making noise so that they could find me in the darkness.
the tide.
Called for Steve as loud as I could manage, but heard no response. He was probably in the back of the car, throat slit, sitting in the face,
Still sniffing around for the rope.
still hunting for the rope. There had to be a ladder or something somewhere. Well, why don't you just take the little girls and just fucking daisy chain them up so you
I
climb up?
mean, yeah, just exactly.
I continued to hum, and my heartbeat, which had been beating almost out of my chest, slow to a manageable rate. I moved. Yankee.
My dog is barking like crazy.
I moved along the cement wall, keeping my whole body against it and the weight off my injured knee. I had traveled what I guessed to be about 10 feet when my head made contact with something in front of me. I tumbled to the ground. Oh.
What the fuck are you
I
doing,
was saying
Dylan?
louder. Just go louder.
Dylan, you
I'm
can't
sorry.
even see the audio.
My concussion must have amplified the pain because it was blinding. I reached both hands to my forehead when I felt something warm and wet on my fingers.
Uh-oh.
I searched for a cut anywhere on my forehead, but couldn't find one. I desperately searched for my flashlight as I sat up and tried to back against the wall.
So wait, he's got something warm and wet on his forehead, but no cut. And then he looks up and this little girl's squirting on his head.
Oh,
no! And he starts freaking out.
Or,
He's
or
like,
it's
that's
like,
gotta be a
or
crime.
or just sees Steve lifting up a leg.
Oh.
Steve, no!
I didn't want that!
Steve, you fucker!
No, he looks up and Steve's got his hand clasped over his mouth and he's going, I didn't ask for this!
I grabbed the light in my right hand, bracing against the wall with the other. I turned it on and pointed it to the darkness where it was just lying. The floor was wet, but the dirt had muddled the color of whatever the liquid was. I tried to get my eyes to focus on the puddle. Tried to convince myself that it was my blood when I saw another drop fall into the puddle.
Did he? Okay, I was gone for a few seconds.
No,
Did he
he's
calm
not.
himself?
No.
He checked his head. He doesn't feel anything. So we were right about the showers spewing blood out of them.
He's got some warm, wet,
Like the
sensual
opening,
goodness on his
the
forehead.
opening of Blade 1 up in this bitch.
Well, it may not be.
Blood
Wait, is
be
it?
water.
Wait, is this?
We
Is
haven't.
it? Is it? Have we confirmed it's actually blood?
I'm trying to
No.
convince myself that it was my blood when I saw another drop fall into the puddle. So I would assume so.
Steve has already
Well-
been strained through the shower.
Yeah,
and
pretty
is now
much.
coming out in
Yeah.
dog blood form.
Yeah, pretty much.
Words lack the ability to describe the way I felt when I heard the drip noise again. I saw yet another tiny ball of liquid fall into the puddle. I think I knew even then exactly what the source was, but I was endlessly trying to convince myself that I was wrong. I lifted the flashlight up and pointed at the source of the liquid. What stared back at me was a pipe that protruded at least a foot from the cement wall. The metal was rusted and cracked. Little bits of liquid began to seep from them. At the end of the pipe was a simple shower head, aimed down towards the ground. You know that feeling when your stomach drops? In this case, I think mine literally did, because I vomited immediately. It got all over my shoe. But that wasn't the least bit important at the time. I ignored the pain in my knee and shuffled along the wall as fast as I possibly could. I heard noises, but I can't be sure if it was just the sounds of my own movements or something around me. I managed to duck under the next shower head. This one was higher up on the wall and seemed to be leaking the same liquid that the other one was. I felt like I was moving along something infinite. Every now and then, I would have to duck or move under another metal bar, another shower head. They began to pour more profusely, but the liquid was too thick to come out easily.
Why is he walking further away from Steve and from Scooby-Doo?
First of all,
and
is
his
he in
rope?
the same room? He's just in
Yeah.
a massive room.
Yeah, basically.
He's in a shower. He's just in a shower
He's
room.
in the maze room. Yeah,
He's in a shower room.
but
He's a horror protagonist, Dan.
I know, but like, even if
Honestly,
you're hearing
though,
shit,
you
you're
can't.
walking further.
There is this idea of fight or flight, and he is clearly trying to. If he's freaked out enough, you're going to be trying
Yeah,
to
but he's
get out.
explaining a flight mentality. You know, he's not
Right.
fighting anything.
Oh, I know, but that's the but he's in that mode right now.
I mean, what you're saying isn't wrong. It's just I feel like he's not.
Logistically,
doesn't really
the thing would
apply.
be to sit there in the dark and wait for the fucking rope.
Well, that's the thing. He can either send in this situation, either send in the dark. But if you're freaked out enough, you try to
trundle off into the dark
He's-
on one leg.
right on one leg and then vomit from
your
the things
shoe.
you're seeing. I'm just saying, like, you know,
He's Jeepers Creepersing super hard.
yeah,
right
a little
now.
bit, yeah.
You know the guy who directed those movies is a pedophile?
Oh, all right. Let's not get into this.
Let's-
I had no
let's do
idea.
this
We're getting a
off.
little-
And he's still making the fourth one.
Off
Oh my
topic.
Because Hollywood doesn't
You mean
punish
the third
topic.
one? Did they make a third
They
one?
made a
Off
third one.
topic.
Are you serious?
What do you mean off topic?
Off topic.
No, yeah, not a good time. Not a good time. Not a good
Off
The
time.
room began to smell.
We'll talk about this
I
later.
remembered immediately the way that Mr. Mace described it. I grabbed my shirt and put it over my nose, trucking onward.
Keep on
But it-
trucking.
But it didn't stop the smell for an instant. It smelled like vomit. It smelled like shit. It smelled like burnt hair. It smelled like rot.
Two of those are his fault.
Smelled like my dirty asshole.
What was the dish himself?
Probs.
I might have.
No, it's the kids down there that don't wash their asshole. Remember
That's
we talked
true.
about it last
Okay.
I was still moving against the wall when I fell into some sort of outlet. I hit the dirt ground hard, adrenaline coursing through my veins. The pain still managed to break through, though. My flashlight was still in my hand. I aimed it and examined my surroundings. Sitting in front of me was a doorway. There was a door there. It looked aged now. It had a nice little design on it, a doorknob and a knocker that looked like a snarling demon. Red paint was peeling from it, flaking off and falling to the ground in front of me. I clumsily rose and busted through the door, narrowly missing a piece of hanging sheet metal in front of me.
It's the sheet metal from the
He's-
first part
He's
of
going.
Oh, there's the door,
Wonderland.
yeah.
I was crawling now. There was no way I could run. The walls and ceiling were lined with metal, the kind you would see on a roof of a farm. Large pieces of wood seemed to brace the sheets, holding this makeshift tunnel together. I couldn't risk sliding against that and possibly cutting myself on the metal, or hitting the wood and causing a cave-in, so I crawled. I pulled myself for what felt like miles, running into walls every now and then because the path seemed to curve like a snake. I had no idea where I was in relation to the hole I had fallen through, but I told myself there was an exit at the end of this. Had I not been crawling, I would have surely hurt myself far worse. There were parts of the tunnel in which the ceiling dipped down to maybe 3 feet above the ground. It hadn't caved in, because the ceiling still lined it. Someone had built it like this. This again is in hindsight. I didn't care at the time. I kept telling myself there was nothing behind me, but I swore I heard feet scraping only a few inches behind my own. My jeans would brush against my legs every now and then, making it feel like someone was touching me, and even now I still can't completely convince myself that someone wasn't. I crawled and crawled until I reached an upslope. With joy, I looked ahead of me. There was a cellar door. The door was made of wood. I knew this because I could see light through them. I couldn't be sure, but I thought it might have been the light from the car's headlights. Besides all that, I was just so immensely happy to find an exit.
I crawled all the way to the door and threw my shoulder into it. It budged, but didn't open. I began to scream, but my throat seared with pain. The most I could manage was a harsh crying noise. It sounded like a dying animal. I collapsed in exhaustion and pain, my eyes staring up at the slits of light before me. I was so close to being out of here I could taste it. It was in that moment of silent defeat that I heard a noise that was, without question, something moving in the tunnel. It sounded like something was being dragged across the floor. It would move, pause for a second, and then move again. I had nothing left in my stomach to throw up, but I began to gag. I gathered myself slightly and tried to steady my hand enough to focus the flashlight into the tunnel. What I saw, I can still not rationalize. I know what I saw, but I cannot convince myself that it was actually there. I can't stop telling myself that I was hallucinating. I saw a child in a dirty sleeping gown. The gown was stained with something dark and brown, with occasional splashes of deep red. The child was extremely frail, like the pictures that people might see of a Holocaust victim. I could only make out one eye, brightly reflecting the light of my flashlight. In between huge tufts of long, dirty hair, it reached down between the fingertips of the child, which were caked in dirt. The boy or the girl, I'm not entirely sure which, moved towards me with difficulty. It wasn't breathing hard, but it seemed like every movement of every muscle took every ounce of strength the child had. The thing that froze me, though, was the eye. It was only visible because it was reflecting my flashlight. But even in the glint, I could feel anger or deep hatred or something like it. This is the point in which the English language really lacks the right words to explain the situation. I can tell that this child meant me harm, whether it was hallucination or not. The thing was getting closer. I started to cry. It was getting closer and closer when I heard a voice from behind me. "Hey, Jack," whispered the voice. It was Steve. I was certain.
Okay, I was really hoping that he would go through this whole tunnel, be panicking the whole time, feeling like there was shit following him and stuff.
And there was nothing.
And there was nothing. I
It
was really
fine.
hoping it was nothing.
It would have been fine.
Well, it still can be if it's just an hallucination.
But I mean,
No, because think about it. This is him. This is Jack, the guy who keeps telling the
But
story
he's
about
seeing
little
the
girl.
exact same thing that his teacher said he saw.
but you could argue that he's hallucinating it because this is technically the place.
He
that
can
this
not the
thing that
tunnel.
his teacher
The
saw.
tunnel's different, but
No,
the
I know
child.
I know what you're talking
Just the
about,
child.
and
We
that's what I'm
You
agreeing with. But at the same time,
You can argue that, but I feel like the authorial intent was to make this like a scary Holocaust baby that the author can hardly believe in because he's just so spooked to see it, and that's a little, expected. But
If this ends up with him being a teacher, telling stories, I swear to God.
Oh my God!
I swear to God.
I tried to talk back, fully intending to say, "Open this up and get me out of here. Get me out right now." However, given my current state, I am sure it just sounded like garbled nonsense. I clawed at the door, pushing against it with everything that I had, and finally breaking eye contact with the child. As I did this, the flashlight rolled down the slope, coming to rest somewhere near the child's feet. "What did you see?" the voice asked. "What are you talking about?" I closed my eyes. I remember hearing a reply along the lines of, "Just look at it, tell me what you see." But my own screams of frustration drowned it out. I was mumbling like a maniac when the voice told me calmly, "Rest for a second, I'll get it." The statement took a second to settle, at which point I closed my eyes tight.
Steve, just do it, please. Please, just get it open, please, I whimpered. Just get me out of here. My voice was beginning to get louder. Steve, goddammit, open the fucking wooden door. I opened my eyes for a split second to see nothing but black hair dangling in front of my face. A small glint of light hidden in the mess of tangles. I slammed my eyes shut and screamed with every ounce of energy I had. Open the fucking The door behind me gave way, and I fell onto the dirt. Taking in a breath of fresh air, my eyes were still closed, but the first thing that I did was scramble to find the cellar door and close it. Once I'd done that, I took a deep breath and opened my eyes. I saw the barn in front of me, illuminated by the headlights of the car. My head was pulsing with pain. I was covered in dirt and liquids that I didn't even care to know the origin of. My knee was, at the very least, dislocated. But despite all of that, I was out of the tunnel. I took a deep breath, buried my head in my hands, and said, "Steve, why didn't you just open the fucking door?" I waited for a response, but none came. "Steve, seriously," I began. "I was fucking clawing and screaming for my life," I said as I looked behind me. My stomach must have been on the verge of falling out of me at this point because it shifted again. The only thing behind me was a large mass of bushes that I had seen while examining the perimeter of the building. I was angry. "Steve, this is not the fucking time. Come out of the fucking bushes." I was getting ready to stand up when I heard a yell from the front of the building. A flashlight bobbed up and down in the semi-darkness. Steve was running into the open door of the structure, yelling my name and telling me not to worry. I must have lost consciousness at this point. When I woke up, Steve was standing over me, desperately trying to wake me up. His words were almost incoherent, at least to my ears. He helped me get to my feet and began to walk me to the car. As we walked away, I saw my flashlight just sitting outside the cellar door. The light was fading.
Steve brought me back to the car and then drove me to the nearest hospital. I fell asleep, but he told me that he drove around for an hour before he found the main road. I don't think I ever told him the whole story. I believe he thinks that I was just injured from the fall. He never really asked about it, and we didn't stay in contact for much longer. It's not like we deliberately parted ways, we just sort of stopped hanging out after that trip and went our separate ways. I have never been able to fully understand what happened that night. There are many things that I can explain away as being hallucinations, but there are still many things that don't make sense. The shower heads were there, and they were leaking something. The door was real. The tunnel was real. Most everything else can be semi-rationalized if I can convince myself I had a very bad concussion, or a very, very bad concussion. But the one thing I couldn't have imagined was that the cellar door was locked, and that it suddenly wasn't. I am still as skeptical as I've ever been, but I believe in what happened to me at the showers. I'm not a hermit or a social retard because of this. I drink a lot, but I am still functional.
That's
what they all
would
say. There it is. But I will never return to Nebraska. No one will ever be able to convince me otherwise. No one probably ever will. I don't watch horror movies either. There's absolutely nothing entertaining about being so desperately scared.
Oh, come on.
That's a real 180. That's it, really. There is no typical ending to my story. I was changed by my experience, yeah, but there is no way to change anything about it or fight back against it. I can't even convince myself I wasn't just seeing things. Believe me, I've been trying for years.
That was a little unnecessary.
Prior to this, there was really no way to find any information on the showers. The legend didn't extend outside the classroom of Mr. Mays. No one told stories like this to keep children away from a certain place or to scare them. It just wasn't known. I guess that's really the point of this whole story. I want people to know, firsthand, what this place is like. Maybe it is a drunk's rationale, or the kid inside me wanting to spread these kinds of stories again. I don't know. I don't care. But it's out there now for people to mold and warp to their needs. Most importantly, it's finally out of my head. It's getting late, and I'm getting another drink. Cheers.
And that was the showers. And, I think I liked it. Hey, I think he turned it around, I think.
I think part 2 is a significant step up from part 1.
Certainly an improvement.
I still feel like part 1
Was unnecessary.
There are parts, I would say that there are large parts of part 1 that are inconsequential to part 2. But I also think that, alright, relax you.
You don't have to say
You didn't even read. I think there are parts of part 1 that are inconsequential to the story, but I also, on the other hand, I also think that it helps a little bit of the narrative in part 2.
You can fix it up and still keep some parts.
Yeah, just because, like, you have a little bit more context for part 2 when it happens, but I also think that it would be scary enough if part 2 was just a standalone
Part
story.
1 helped establish the motivations of this character for
Right.
wanting to do this in the first
and that's
place.
fine. But I think, but here's the thing about part 2 as well, and we talked about this in the middle of it, where you could probably still eliminate part 1 and you'd still have a comprehensive, cohesive story in part 2. It would just be, hey, we were driving around Nebraska after vacation, but why would you be in Nebraska, whatever, but that's unclear, but it's not important necessarily. We stumbled upon this farm, I fell in, I injured my knee real bad, I wandered around, I saw some creepy shit.
You could just
It
clearly
still worked.
say, we're a couple of Nebraska natives. There's nothing to do here.
Right.
We found a farm.
Right.
Let's explore it.
Right. Part 2 could exist as its own story and have nothing to do with part 1. But again, like you said, it does help with the
Motivations.
motivations.
Yeah, I
of
don't
the
think
character.
that part 2 can stand alone necessarily invalidates part 1. I think part 1 invalidates itself on its own.
Yeah, fair enough.
But I just feel like, yeah, it was better, actually. A lot less of the heavy-handed narration, a lot less telegraphing and clumsy foreshadowing.
It's kind of more in the moment.
A lot less telling us how we ought to feel while reading the story.
Right.
And I was disappointed that it was still the spooky little fella.
Well, you don't, I mean, again,
But
we don't
whatever.
know what it was. That's the thing.
Alright, I get it, but the author distinctly described a spooky little fella with dark black hair over his face.
Right, because
And then we play the whole, who can say whatever, but it's wanting your cake and eat it too, at that point.
Well, no, but he's also playing through the story of Mr. Mays' story while he's down there, anyway.
Look, it's the equivalent of having like a movie and a character's freaking out and you hear things off screen and you hear scurrying and you see flashes, but you never see anything. Whereas this would be a big monster reveal at the end. And then the character was like, well, I don't know if I really saw anything. And it's like, bullshit.
This isn't even a real monster reveal. This
Alright,
is just
no,
a small...
I'm just making my point,
Well,
which is
okay.
that they spring the child on us, and then they try to play the whole, was it really ever there? It's like, well, you showed it to us, so now we believe it's there. Like, you need to keep it out of sight if you want to play the maybe, maybe not.
Also, the narrator says at the beginning of the story, this is 100% true, the story.
Yeah.
But then at the end, he's like, but I don't know what I
Wait,
saw.
he-
Dylan's bursting at
Okay,
the seams.
hold on.
What do
Yeah,
you want
go
to say?
ahead,
Okay,
Dylan.
this may seem like a far stretch, but
Oh, here we
please
go.
hear me out on this.
Here we go.
So,
It's a dream.
John just brought up that, it's not like the same exact story Mr. May said, correct?
Yeah.
Now, remember in the beginning he says he liked to lie in his stories?
Oh no.
Dan, it's fine, Dan.
No, so
Let
just
him
think.
finish.
Imagine,
You're
now
saying-
think this with part 1 was just a lie, and he's Mr. Mays telling the story, because he's drinking all of a sudden, he's at the bar drinking, which Mr. Mays was
Are
doing.
you saying that the narrator of the story has an alternate identity known as Mr. Mays? Is that what you're telling
I'm
us?
saying the whole thing was fabricated, because remember he said he likes to lie in his stories he makes up?
But he tells the
So
tells
you're
the
saying-
audience
That's
that Mr.
actually,
Mays
no,
dies.
honestly,
No, he
I
likes to
kind of
lie
agree with
about
that.
it, because, honestly, he's saying, oh, this is 100% true, but remember, he said he lies in the stories he makes up.
Dylan, this is an interesting concept with zero support in
Yeah.
the text.
No,
This
hold
is
on.
completely
Don't you remember
come
Mr.
from
I
your
kind
own
of-
mind.
I think
Don't
that's
you remember
possible.
Mr. Mays was at the bar when Jack found
There
him?
is, yeah, there's some
drinking.
parts to it. No, I agree
Drinking
with him.
again.
He tells the but you would drink after an experience like that. He tells even you who don't drink would fucking drink.
This
an
is
experience like that.
what you're saying.
But he tells the audience that
But
Mr. Mays dies.
but-
Though.
So that is the lie. It's all
What,
fabricated.
I'll go even deeper than Dylan. What if Mr. Mays was his younger self, and after he experienced the showers, he died and became Jack?
Yeah, and the girl was actually his mother the whole
Right.
time. See, we can go
I know.
on and
This
on
is ridiculous.
and say ridiculous things. And
I was trying to bring up.
No, I like
Dylan's
Dylan's idea, but I
No,
I like your idea,
know
but I'm
what?
gonna agree with Will. I feel like there's nothing in the
There
text.
is some
Because
supporting
why
context
why did it
clues
sound
to...
the same? Why did the story sound the same? Nothing really.
The
changed
idea
in
is
his
that it's
story.
because he
the
went
place-
to the same place
and was destroyed the same way. He became
The
an
same
alcoholic who
way.
hated himself.
Yeah.
Effectively.
Mr. Mays
or
did
just
this.
doubted himself.
Mr. Mays did the same damn thing. He
Yes.
was by himself.
Dylan, people can have similar experiences and not be the same person.
It just seems too coincidental for that.
Does it though?
It
I don't
does.
think
It's fine. We don't have to argue the semantics
Wait,
of this, honestly.
hold on. What exactly seems
right
coincidental
after-
about that? They both drink after they experience their.
He's at the bar ordering another drink, which Mr. Mays did.
Right.
After
Also,
saying the
I
story,
think.
it's a
Okay, hold on. I
very,
think.
very
I think
loose
what
quote.
Dylan's trying to say is the two supporting context clues of his theory is A, drinking, and B, the fact that in the beginning of the story, this is a guy who likes to likes to lie in his stories.
Because you see,
But even
he
still,
says
it's a very.
If you want to hang a theory on those 2 points, more power to you. That's fine. I can't say anything to disprove it because it's come from nothing. So I can't disprove what is
Come
not.
from nothing. It's coming from those two observations.
Right, you're right.
But I think that is a very, very far pull.
It's a bit of a stretch.
I
at
did
the
say-
very
I did
least.
say it
It's a
was a
funny
stretch. I
idea, but
we talked about like during the wide mouth Jesus Christ, the wide mouth podcast where we had all the different interpretations, but there were like evidence in the text to support some of the stuff at least.
William went with gas leaks.
Yeah,
so.
yeah. Jokingly.
But right, I wasn't pitching it as a
Right.
genuine.
Yeah, I know.
This seems a little
I
bit
did
more
call mine a
far-fetched.
stretch. I said just
No,
bear with
no,
me.
it's fine.
No, it's not like an attack on you, Dylan.
Yeah.
I don't want you to
It
feel like
kind of
I'm,
felt like an attack
I'm
on
sorry.
me.
I'm sorry. It's
And
not
you
an
know the
attack on you.
I mean, yeah,
What about that?
I guess. I guess. Why not? We don't know what the fuck happened,
I have
really.
a more
So
pressing question.
okay.
What about that silo dough?
What about that silo dough?
Now we want to
That's
talk
pretty
about
cool.
that.
No, I like the fact
That
we
was
don't
the
know.
spaceship.
No, I like
Exactly. That leaves credence to my theory now that it was a spaceship the whole time.
The fact. Why? And what about that? They just left one behind.
Yeah, they missed her. Little bitch was in the walls.
No, I like what I do like about part 2. I think my favorite thing about part 2 that I think is very extremely creepy and is effective in terms of horror is this idea of crawling around in a really narrow space and constantly hearing things moving behind you in the dark.
Nipping at your heels.
That is fucking scary. If you really
And you're
try to
injured.
put yourself right, if you really try to put yourself in that situation, that's fucking
Anything's
terrifying.
plausible
Right.
in that scenario.
That's terrifying. And I
Yeah.
like that image. And I like part 2 way more than I like part 1.
Same.
Because it was straightforward. He didn't interrupt himself constantly, and while it being, there were elements of tropes in it, at least the point of horror was interesting, and it was clever enough with how he gets injured and blah, 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 and everything else. So, part 2's good.
No, it was
I like
paced
the story.
well, competently put together.
Yeah.
It's solid.
And I think even with part 1, I don't think we ever said that the writing was awful. I think this person clearly knows how to write a story.
Well,
and
it's just,
clearly
the,
knows
it's
how
just
to-
the pacing was
I think
fucking
we
I think the
accused
pacing was
shit.
literally the one part that kills everything.
and the masturbatory narration.
Mr. Maze.
It was so cool.
Yeah, that got a little old.
So cool. He would
But this
curse
is
and
just,
he
but
was
this is just two dudes on an adventure in a farmhouse in
Two-
Nebraska.
two-
Because what else are you
Bro
doing in fucking
jobs,
Nebraska?
choo-choo.
Two dudes in a barn. What could go wrong?
Oh, come up, fell to the floor.
So what about this entity that talks to him through the door and then opens the door? What the fuck?
We
was that all
don't. That's
about?
I like that because we don't know.
I
What the
don't know about that. The little kid's one thing, but like having this fucking malevolent voice going, "What do you see?" And then the door opens is a little ridiculous.
That felt like a half-baked idea
Yeah.
that was just left half-baked.
Yeah, he was like, "I don't know where I'm going with this. Fuck it."
Yeah, he was like, I don't know what to do with this. I guess that's a little creepy.
Because I'm
We're
half
just gonna leave it.
I'm half expecting like the door to open. He's like, "Steve," and he turns around and it's like a fucking dude with a hatchet. And
There
like,
was never any.
You know what I was
payoff for
waiting?
that.
Okay,
Jenkins.
hold on. You know what I was honestly waiting for? There was one thought in my head as I was listening to the voice. And if I heard, and if this was true, I would have left the room. I would have turned off the recording, and I would have deleted the channel completely. If the voice was actually Mr. Maze.
Oh my god!
Oh,
Amazing.
I would have been furious.
That would have been amazing.
I'm here to save you. I'm a monster.
I faked my own death.
Pockets of dirt still on his shoulders. Mr.
Well-
Maze, were you in the ground?
Well, according to Dylan, that would be impossible because the narrator, Mr. Mays.
And Mr. Maze looks at him and goes, "You're in a dream, kid. You need to wake up."
You killed yourself, but you're not actually dead. You're in a
Mr.
coma in a
Mason,
dream.
you're in a dream.
I love
And you're
y'all
me.
too.
And I'm your twin.
Oh,
And then Steve went,
You fell un-
"Whoa."
You fell unconscious as Steve is blowing you. You need to wake up from the dream.
Bro jobs in the back of the car.
It was a tacit yes, dude. Yeah, that made no sense. That
Jesus
whole
Christ.
ethereal voice behind
But you know
the
what?
door.
Look,
Yeah,
we were invested the whole way.
Was
Part
good.
two,
Pretty
I don't
much,
think there was a single moment where, aside from
Just the whole party at the beginning.
well, even that was fine-ish. It didn't have to
It
jump
was a
directly
drag.
into the. Again, there's some context to what he was
concise.
doing.
Right.
Like, what was he doing in Nebraska? That's weird. Like he goes around the country. Why Nebraska? Well, this is why he's there.
Right,
That's
and
fair.
you know what they say, brevity is the soul of not making your reader want to kill himself, and that was
Right,
nice
and
to-
then you have the whole
That's
thing
the
where
soul
he wants
for
to be
it.
a writer because of Mr. Maze, and it goes back into that whole thing where he idolized Mr. Maze, and that's the reason.
And then he writes this thing called The Showers, and a bunch of idiot 20-something-year-olds talk about it on a fucking and record it. And
Right. So someone listening to this right now makes another story that becomes the next big
Fair enough.
creepypasta,
I'm
which is
still
why you
working.
should all keep writing.
Still working on my Cthulhu story from a year ago. I don't know if I'm ever gonna finish it. Ugh.
That's the dream.
Ugh.
Yeah, I think that's it. Showers, You know what? I'm gonna say
hit the showers.
I'm gonna. You know what? I would hit that shower.
I would hit that shower.
I would tap that shower.
I would fucking.
not
I
what
would.
it means.
I would take my towel.
You know what
I'd
the
roll it
story
up, and
was?
I'd bull
You know
crack
what?
it.
This shower. You know what? My experience with the story was started off. The hot water wasn't running, and it was really annoying. And you had to get management. It was like, fuck. Hey, I spent so much money on this fucking hotel room. And then, but you know what? Once the hot water came on, it was a nice warm shower, and I enjoyed it.
I think that's the best way to end the podcast. I think that is the most perfect metaphor, and no one could ever achieve any greater metaphor for the story.
But
ever.
John, why did you find a little girl in your shower?
So join us next time for this. Join us next time
with looks of hatred and anger.
I didn't look at anger.
No,
This has been myself skillfully with my sick friend Dylan, my giggly friend Dan, and my dick friend William. Makes accusations that aren't true.
Allegedly.
It was an alleged child.
See you next time. Take care of yourselves. Take care of everybody.
Empty shot on the table. And then fucking it's Jack, and he's a little bit older, and he's got gray in his beard, and fucking the bartender comes over, and you're like, another one, Mr. Mays, and he's like, make it a double, and that's how it ends.
This one also, like, what's it called? Didn't he not go on a trip after during college too?
I mean, I guess, but I think the
after he
whole
graduated
point
college,
of the
Mr.
story
Mays?
was that he was mirroring
It was
his
supposed
idol.
to be cyclical.
Right.
See, I didn't see it. I saw it as, because he said in the beginning he lies. He lies in his story. So I took
But
it
the
as
whole
he
point was
he
I lie
fabricating.
about everything, but this story is true.
Dylan, how does your mind work sometimes? It's
No,
really
I mean,
fascinating.
that's what he...
No, hold on.
That's
No,
what- but
hold on.
that's
I'm going
what
to get
he-
off you for a
hold
second.
on,
I'm going to
hold
get
on,
off you for a
hold
second.
on.
How the fuck does your mind work? My fucking God.
Because that's what Dill picked up from the story, and that's what he latched
I don't
onto.
understand.
Whatever.
Yeah, we both make inferences.
No, but
based on what we
but
read.
I'm gonna agree with John. That whole fucking Coke thing was the dumbest shit I've ever heard. That big old thing was dumb as
The
fuck.
big old thing was not.
That came out of
No,
nowhere.
no.
public service
No.
announcement.
When he started saying the obese thing, I was like, okay, this kind of makes sense.
Thank you.
Because it's a very you thing to say. That's a very you
No,
thing.
I even said it was a very
hold
thing
on.
to say.
I didn't say I didn't agree with him about the coconut. I agreed with him about the fat ass part where he stepped on the fucking floor and
Exactly.
He
rolled through.
jumped on a fucking rotten piece of wood and fell through the goddamn floor.
He was a tubbo.
Okay, if,
You should-
if-
okay.
okay, hold on,
John,
If
hit
Nate-
the record button.
if Jack was the size of Nate, was he falling through?
No.
Yes!
Fuck no.
Thank you.
Fuck no, he wasn't.
Thank
Well,
you.
no, then he would only go half through
And
this
maybe-
little, and
and
Nate would be
Any
half
one
in the
of us what did that, we're falling through.
And maybe if
Because
America
Nate
was
is a
less
fucking
obese,
midget and he weighs like 2 pounds.
Fucking
statistically,
exactly.
odds are with him not falling through.
Yes.
Thanks, Cuomo.
Holy shit, William.
That part, leave me out of that part.
Yeah, I mean,
I agree with you with the obesity part.
yeah.
That's it.
No, they're doing
the
no,
worst
a fat
semantics
fuck.
we've
No.
ever argued
I'm
in
gonna
the story.
fucking
ever.
no. I'm gonna use the
This
beginning
is
of
the
part.
worst.
Dylan, Dad, shut up. I'm using the
Did you
part.
just call me Dylan?
I did. Because you won't shut
How
up.
dare you?
I'm sorry.
I'm over here.
I'm moving in the same direction. No, in the beginning of the story, they were talking about renting cabins together and hiking together,
And
going
giving each
road
other
climbing
blow
together.
jobs.
No, that's not the point. Fat people could do that anyway.
They're on a weight loss regimen.
God damn it!
It's
no
a
one.
self-improvement
They
trip.
will not.
Why you hit me?
It's a more fun
upset.
way to get healthy. Why go to a gym
You're
where
not
you're
gonna go
judged
rock
when you
climbing
can
in
take
a real
chubby
mountain.
friend and
You
go to a gym.
The fucking.
You know, go to the fucking
Gooch
Rocky
of the
Mountains to get your
Midwest.
summer bod.
It's just I don't get it. It's just a way to be living a more active lifestyle.
Where was this story?
I'm not going to fucking gym to get fucking ridiculed. Are
That's-
you fucking kidding me?
At some point, you need to make
Listen,
the change.
I exercise
okay.
all weekend long, and I feel great.
Let's.
I
Here's
ate
it.
all
I
weekend
don't.
long,
I
and
don't
I'm
mean to be
getting
mean
fatter.
about this, Dan. But think about it this way: you don't go to a gym to lose weight. You go outside and walk
right.
to lose weight.
Right.
Case in point.
Because
What he's
I don't
want to
go to
Why
a gym.
you're not
because
one?
one, I don't want to pay money
One.
to get judged by everyone. You're absolutely
All
right.
right.
I'm self-conscious,
But
which is
this-
why
but
I'm
this-
walking
But
everywhere.
this is what Will is talking about when he's saying to go
But
for a
this
hike.
has nothing. We do. And no
This has
point,
less to
but
do
because
than
the
his
narrator
theory.
says that he's a ham. Is that what you're gonna latch on to?
I didn't
No.
say that.
Now
No.
William's gonna be like, actually, exactly.
Those were not my words.
I
Was
love
it
how
subconscious?
Dylan's theory is not the craziest theory that's been thrown out about this story. How is that
Not
possible?
a theory. He just weighed too much for the bearing of those boards.
Oh my God.
That's fact.
How about he was just an average-sized human being who weighs about 160, 170 pounds, like your weight? You would probably fall through. And I'm not calling you fat.
70.
You need to shut your fucking
That's
mouth.
too much.
Shut your
him would not
fucking
fall
mouth.
through. No, he would not.
You don't know the...
Okay,
Oh my
first of all, we don't know if it's wood. They never
It was
specify
wood!
that it's- Does it say that it's wood?
It does.
Yes!
Broken wood.
Okay.
What broken
It's
wood?
rotten wood.
Rotted wood! Which means Nathan would probably fall through it easily
No,
if he stepped
Nate's
on
too
it hard
thin.
enough.
He would fall halfway through,
That's
and his legs would be kicking around like a cartoon downstairs trying to get out.
I thought it made perfect sense. Just felt a little.
I don't know why. I mean,
It didn't.
you know
People are
what?
gonna be
This
very confused.
episode was honestly like the opposite of most episodes, where like
So,
we start
I
off
know-
very mellow, and then it gets to a point where we
I
get
know
really.
you. I know you don't listen to them. But when this
Yeah.
one goes out, probably go back and listen to how ridiculous you sound.
How on point I was the whole time.
And he won't do that.
How nearly Neil deGrasse Tyson-esque on point I was.
You know, as you guys are taken aback from the whole Cuomo conversation he was talking about over there in the open.
What fucking Cuomo?
I figured I'd throw in some New York City politics into the mix.
You're not even from here.
Doesn't matter.
We're not even from
He's
New
here
York
now. He's
Yeah,
here now.
Dad.
I've lived in
Dan,
New York
that's
City for like
Dan,
3
that's
years.
the worst part. Neither are we.
First of
We're
all,
on Long Island.
on the
First of all,
state.
I
We're
literally
in the state of
I
New York.
lived in New York City for 3 years.
Oh, well,
I was
fucking. Do you want to?
I was at ground zero of the soda tax.
Do you want to fucking blowjob?
No, but I'd like to get a little bit of credit for
Sorry, it's a
being
bro
in
job.
the eye of the storm when Cuomo was trying to strip our God-given big gulps away from us.
Talking.
I remember that. That was
John,
how many years
figure
ago
out
was
what
that?
class you want to play as, for Christ's sake.
How many years ago was that, Will?
How many years ago was that? Jesus Christ.
It feels like that was
4?
yeah,
I
it
can't.
felt something around that.
Yeah. I was a freshman or a sophomore at the time.
This is
2013, right?
fucking
Yeah.
maddening.
I've kept the recording going all this time, by
Are
the
you
way.
s- no, you
Oh, it's
haven't.
been great. No,
No, you
this has been
have
fantastic.
not.
It's been going on for like 15 minutes.
No,
It's
you
great.
have
Look, that's good because that vindicates me then.
No, it doesn't.
Now it's
vindicate
on
you.
record.
No, you sound even more like a fucking
What are you
Looney
talking
Tune.
about? Looney Tune? How? In what way?
You're gonna have a nice time editing out my nose.
This has been.
I probably can.
Okay.
If it's intertwined with the.
It was
I'll just try to
it
limit
was a logical
You
and
lower it.
not topical.
If people are still
reference.
listening to this, you're crazy.
Would you agree with me in saying, put Will's face on a gnome and put him in a monk's dress? Okay. I told you. I told you. I told you.
Okay. It's alright, that's fine. Fuck you. It's fine.
I'm just saying. I just see it.
You're just
I see
saying.
it. I just see
You're
it.
just saying.
Put a
That's
little,
cool.
put a little pointy hat on your head, you know?
Yeah, fuck you. I'm just saying. That's all. What am I, a Christmas gnome? Am I a fucking elf?
I mean,
You honestly, the
you
more
can
he
be
says
any
it,
gnome you want to be.
the more
okay?
I look at it now, I actually do.
The more you
I
know
kind
him,
of
the
Am
more
agree.
I
better.
that fucking dude wanting to be a dentist doing my bullshit? Fuck you.
The more you know him, the better you are.